How many hours go into preparing just one killer presentation or slide deck? This high-value piece of content often gets written off as an internal-facing document, but where the slide deck ends, the repurposing could begin. Keep listening to find out all the ways you can put your presentation to further use after you've finished presenting. You're listening to the Content 10x podcast, where it's all about content repurposing. I'm Amy Woods, and I'm here to help you maximize your content and find smart ways to get your message in front of more of the right people, whilst also saving time. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Content 10x podcast. I'm your host, Amy Woods, and this week I'm sharing 7 creative ways you can repurpose your presentations. Now just think, how many PowerPoint presentations or Google slide decks did you create or look at last year? And how many of those presentations went on to become something else? Now, according to the BBC, there could be as many as 30 million PowerPoints created every single day. Now, honestly, back in my old days as a management consultant, it often felt like I single-handedly may have been responsible for about 1 million of those presentations. Honestly, I created a lot of presentations. But for your presentations, you may have referred back to them at a later date and maybe delivered them once or twice more. But that's not really what I'm talking about here in this episode. I'm talking about actually taking that content that you spent time and energy putting together and turning it into something that lives on beyond a presentation. Now, I just mentioned that 30 million PowerPoints get created every day according to the BBC, and I'm willing to bet that not many of those presentations go on to do much else other than gather dust at the back of a Dropbox or Microsoft Teams folder, because that's just what happens. We get a bit stuck in this binary idea of what type of content was created for internal purposes and external, and what is suitable for repurposing and what isn't. But this episode is here to help you break the mold and think outside the box when it comes to your presentations and give you tips on improving their lifespan. So in this episode, I'm going to share the best practices for repurposing a presentation and then give you 7 very different ways that you can repurpose it, really just to help you increase your ROI on the time spent creating it and get that awesome content to more people. So let's dive in with 4 best practices for repurposing your presentations. Now, the first thing that kind of goes without saying, but you must check for sensitive or confidential information. So some content may not be suitable for sharing outside of what it was originally intended for. So that's number 1. If we're repurposing internal presentations, let's just check what we can share externally. Number 2 is to record your presentation if you can. So if you're presenting your slide deck virtually, such as via Zoom, a way to instantly maximise your repurposing potential is to hit record. Having a video recording of you actually talking through your presentation, elaborating on points, and maybe even having others chip in with ideas is going to give you a lot more versatility when it comes to repurposing. I'll come on to how a little bit later, but know now that you don't have to repurpose the entire video recording either. Number 3 is to invest time in your presentation's appearance. So you know how I always say create content with repurposing in mind. Presentations are often really well designed, and it's reported that 91% of presenters feel more confident presenting with a well-designed slide deck, and a more confident presenter usually means a better presentation. So it's wise to invest time and energy into getting your slide deck looking great, but it'll pay off even further in the long run, as you may be able to lift slides directly from your deck to create awesome images. All you'll need to do is adjust the dimensions. So when you're creating your slide, do put a little bit of extra time into getting them social media ready, or speak to designers in your business if you have them and see if they can help add some magic to the appearance of the slide deck. And finally, number 4 is to make notes on what the most repurposable bits of your presentation are. This follows on with creating your presentation with repurposing in mind. but instead of from a visual standpoint, I'm now talking more from a content and messaging perspective too. So there might be quotes or data points or even a narrative thread that could go on to become something else. As you're creating your presentation, you can note down what slide could go on to become a graphic, for example, or a part of training or webinar or a Twitter thread or a blog post, so you get the gist. And I can't encourage you enough to utilise the notes portion of your slideshow software, because this is where you can store all those extra insights that elaborate on your visuals. And these can help you write accompanying text for social media posts and even form the foundations of a blog post. So don't overlook these sections. I like to think about it like the phrase, a picture says 1,000 words, but when it comes to a slideshow, the notes will say a good 1,000 more on top as well. Okay, so there are some general tips for getting a presentation ready for repurposing. So use these to form the basis of repurposing your presentation. But now I want to give you some ideas of the kinds of things that you can create with a little repurposing magic and some more specific guidance as well. So here's my 7 suggestions. Number 1 is a blog post. Now, the reason why a blog post is such a great way to repurpose your presentation is because it can be used internally or externally, and it's almost like having a full set of notes to refer back to. So instead of others glancing through your presentation and picking up some pointers from some patchy notes, a blog post can explain in detail your points. And a huge plus point to this is that you already have your structure and a lot of your text there from your notes. So it's really just about fleshing it out so anyone who's not seen your presentation can get the right messages. You can also make it more engaging by adding screenshots of your presentation slides into the blog post, so it's not just a wall of text. And this long form repurposing is great for anyone who wants to add their presentation to their website or share information with those who weren't there for the delivery of the presentation. So that's number 1, repurpose your presentation into a blog post or into many blog posts. Hey, just a little break from this podcast episode to ask you a question. Would you like one single place that you can go to that provides you with everything you need to be able to implement the best practices in content repurposing for your video content, your podcast episodes, and your social media content today? To help you get more value from the content that you create, get more time back, and help you reach more people than you ever thought possible. If so, then you are going to love the Content 10x Toolkit. The toolkit is full of video tutorials, templates, checklists, swipe files, step-by-step guides and more that shows you how to repurpose your content in the best ways possible today. No more Googling, no more figuring it out yourself. We provide you with everything that you need to become a content repurposing pro. If this sounds like something that would interest you, then go check out the Content 10x Toolkit at content10x.com/toolkit. Okay, and back to this week's episode. Now, if your goal is to share the information with others within your organisation, I highly suggest adding this to your blog post as well. A video recording of your presentation. So this is number 2, a video or a podcast episode. So I suggested earlier in this episode to hit record when you start your presentation if you're delivering something on Zoom or Microsoft Teams, and here's why. Now, you could share that recording far and wide within your organisation, and it's much more time effective than getting people to sit through the original presentation, because people can even watch it on 1.5 or 2 times speed at a time that suits them. Now, if you feel self-conscious about your presentation skills on video, and very importantly, if the presentation isn't visually dependent, as in it's going to make sense without seeing the slides, then you could strip out the audio and simply publish a podcast style recording alongside a copy of your presentation. So that's something to consider, stripping out the audio, and you would have a podcast episode. Now, with the video, in most cases, it might only be suitable for consumption within your organisation, but it's easy to upload a private video to Wistia or YouTube or whatever platform you prefer. And with the podcast option, many hosts offer private podcasting for organisations. For example, Captivate, the host that we love to use, they offer private podcasting, so that would be perfect for this kind of situation. So that's my suggestion. Repurpose it into an internal training style video or a podcast episode. Now, if you can share the majority of the content externally and you like the video idea, then why not host a webinar? So that's option number 3, repurpose the presentation into a webinar. A webinar is essentially a presentation, so you already have everything you need. And I recommend hosting a live webinar, but that's really up to you. And what you need to decide is if you want to present it solo or invite guests to help and discuss through the presentation. And it's likely you'll need to add in an intro or extra content at the beginning about who you are, what your organisation does, and what the presentation is about, and removing anything confidential as we discussed before. And you can do a lot of this exposition in the promo phase, because of course you're going to need to promote your webinar ahead of time so people attend. And one other thing I suggest is adding a call to action at the end of the webinar, for example to visit your blog post on the website for more information. So you might want to make sure you repurpose your presentation into a blog post before you embark on the webinar. And also this could help with your webinar planning. And you'll need to do some technical setup for this, like choosing what software you want to use to host the webinar and where to stream it. You can find out way more information all about this in episode 220 of the Content 10x podcast. So go check that out. Head to content10x.com/220 and I'll put the link in the show notes as well. Lots of really useful information about running webinars. So that's option 3, repurpose the presentation into a webinar. Now sticking with videos, let's move over to social media. Option 4, repurpose into social media videos or audiograms. So if you've hit record on your presentation, it's likely you've got a nice long video to play with, but not all of that material may be suitable to share on social media. And in fact, hardly anyone wants to watch an hour-long presentation. But people do like to watch short, informative, inspiring, entertaining clips. So this is where you're in luck. So share your awesome discussion points and thought-provoking or eye-opening moments in short video formats. It's a brilliant way to give your audience a behind-the-scenes look at what goes on inside your business. And these moments from your presentation give a relatable and engaging window into your organisation's values, and they're the most powerful form of content to share on social media. There's lots to be aware of when it comes to repurposing videos for social media that I covered in last week's episode number 223. So do give that a listen if you want to know more about the more technical side. When it comes to the content side, my advice is to choose the most engaging standalone moments and then use your note copy to fill out the captions and elaborate further on the point, so to write that social media copy. Okay, so that's option number 4 for repurposing. Now sticking with social media, arguably the easiest thing you can repurpose your slides into are social media graphics. That is number 5. Now I mentioned earlier that if you pay attention to your design in the creation phase, then your repurposing will be a smooth process. And this is what I was referring to in particular. It's so easy to repurpose your slides into graphics for social media, because all you need to do is screenshot the slides, get your image dimensions correct for each platform, add some caption copy, and voila, awesome social media graphics efficiently created. My top tips are to use a program like Canva to get your image sizes right, and look back at your notes for each particular slide when writing the caption copy. And again, just make sure that the content is suitable for your social media audience, it stands alone, and you don't want to be adding reams of context in the captions, as people will be less likely to engage. Okay, so one final social media suggestion for you, option number 6, is creating a carousel post. So carousel images on LinkedIn and Instagram are fantastic for engagement. And the best part is they're basically a presentation. So it's a fantastic way to repurpose your presentation to social media. Converting your presentation into a carousel is quite easy. So for LinkedIn, you need to save your presentation as a PDF, and for Instagram, it's JPEG or PNG files. And just to say again that you want to be paying attention to the correct image dimensions for the platform, so in this case for Instagram and LinkedIn, and you can use your notes copy to write the captions as well. But head to content10x.com/160 for way more content and information on creating carousels. And finally, how about repurposing your presentation into a speech, so a keynote or a speech? Now, I'm betting of those 30 million presentations created every day, that very few actually get transformed into a keynote or a speech to talk at an event. But if your presentation includes original research or guidance that could help and enlighten others, then think about taking it to the stage. You could apply to speak at events in your industry and consider putting on your own event even. And this isn't for everyone, I know, not everyone wants to be a public speaker, but if you're a confident public speaker or willing to give it a go, then this could be a great repurposing opportunity for your personal brand and elevating your business's presence within your industry as well. So let me recap those 7 options really quickly for repurposing a presentation. So number 1, repurpose into a blog post. Number 2, into a training video or a podcast episode. Number 3, a webinar. Number 4, social media videos or audiograms. Number 5, social media graphics. 6, LinkedIn and Instagram carousels. And 7, a speech or a keynote presentation. Now, there are more repurposing opportunities for presentations out there. These are just some to get you thinking, and of course you can mix and match or even do all of the options that I've suggested. Think about all that amazing content from just one slide deck. If you found this episode interesting, then please do share it with people inside or outside your organisation that you think would really benefit from it. And let me know if you'll be making more of your presentations from now on too. Now, as always, if you need help with your content repurposing, then don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can find out all about our services here at Content 10x by just heading to content10x.com/services, because we offer a fully done-for-you end-to-end repurposing service for B2B tech and professional services businesses that are creating podcast and video content. And if done for you isn't what you want, then grab a copy of my book, Content 10x. It's on Amazon, or you can head to content10x.com/book. So all that's left to say is thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I'll catch you in the next one.